Last time was in '92, St. Petersburg. Fantastic memory. So it's a very different situation. Also, so what was done in the meantime regarding public employment services in Russia, very impressive. And I'm very glad to be able to tell you what we've done also about the last 20 years or so, what we've achieved in Switzerland, what were the major changes, and also what's what we still have to do, what are the questions today, and I will try to stick to the 20 to 25 minutes. You give me 5 minutes more than what I was given by Margareta. We maybe to my presentation, it's called From Centralized to Decentralized Steering. It's also very much from input and output oriented steering to outcome oriented along my presentation. Some facts about Switzerland. It's a rather small country, 8 million people, but 23.8, almost a quarter of them foreign nationals. If we count all the people who immigrated over the last 50 or 60 years and became Swiss people, I think about half the population has some origin from abroad. I'm half French, half Swiss, so I'm nothing really special in my country. National language is German for the larger part, then French, Italian, Romansh, which is Latin language spoken only in a few regions, and others. So it's more than 100%. The surveys allows in Switzerland to give 2 main languages, but it shows that also a lot of people use a foreign language daily, foreign in our view. We have a very, very high net activity rate. I think Iceland has a slightly higher one, and maybe Norway, but I think worldwide, otherwise it's one of the highest net activity rates. And rather low unemployment rate there. We are about also with Norway, always a bit on one end or the other end of any chart you can see. We have a very liberal labor market policy and structure, which we'll find a lot of countries around Europe, Western Europe, but still quite some jobs in the secondary sector. To show you a little bit Switzerland, we have, this is the map of Switzerland and with the 26 cantons. And you can see the unemployment rate, which differs from region to region. And there is also a shift in time from unemployment from cantons, depending what the economic situation is, from one canton to the other, it can change. So it means you don't have to have a large country to have huge differences, and I will explain a little bit the differences we have in a really small country. Here we have mountains, and we have here a lot of tourism, meaning seasonal unemployment a lot, or agriculture. We have excellent wine here in valleys, also to some extent in Graubünden, but these are really fantastic. Then we have the watch industry, which is concentrated here in some French part of Switzerland. So all the watches you like, or maybe you have some of those, are made there. We have the chemistry industry, which is located around Basel. It's very concentrated there. We have financial services, which are around Zurich. And we ask, okay, told me about the watches, and the cheese is made more here in the middle. So this is to show that the focus on each region is different. And then we have the capital region, which is also different in its structure. So it means a lot of structures are very different from one canton, one region to the other, meaning also when there is a crisis, it can be a financial crisis, though there we have problem with Zurich, or where there was the grounding of our airline, Swissair, some years ago. This was concentrated in Zurich. When we had a problem with the export industry because the Swiss franc was too strong, then we had problem more in the region where they made the watches and the machines, and to some extent also in the touristic regions. So this means you have to have different answers to different questions, even in a small country. Labor market policy, I told you what started about 20 years ago. Active labor market policy, until then we had only so-called passive labor market policy, payment of unemployment benefits. But we had quite a steep rise in unemployment at the beginning of the 90s. Until then we had, so to say, no unemployment. Unemployment rates were under 1% because we could also send seasonal workers back home or tell them not to come back. But this was politically not possible anymore at the beginning of the 90s, and there were some crises. And this is really the first time Switzerland was hit by unemployment. And there was a strong political reaction, and then there was the window of opportunity, so to speak, to do something, to implement an active labor market policy. The politics really wanted to do something, and they supported us, even though our minister, the first time my former boss went to him and told him, well, we should do something, he thought, well, you're pretty much crazy, because it was an idea which was not very widespread worldwide to have active labor market policy in around 95, while he came up with the idea already in 93. And the objective of this new labor market policy, the active labor market policy, was and still is rapid and durable insertion of job seekers into the labor market. And the instruments we use for that, not surprisingly, regional employment centers, labor market programs, and the strict definition of reasonable job. This was really a major change at that time. Remember, it's back in 95. What were the rights and duties of job seekers from then on? Have been, there still are. The rights was to receive unemployment benefits, but also to get help from job centers to find a new job. And the duties were newly defined: actively search for a new job based on own initiative. We expect people to find a job by themselves. This is very important, not that we find a job for them. Respect control regulation, respect instructions from the job centers telling, well, you can go and have a look for a job there, for instance. If unemployed don't respect these duties, their unemployment benefits can be cut successfully. First time maybe it's 5 days, then it's more, and until they don't get benefits anymore. But usually after the first so-called sanction, they know what it's all about. And it's also very important at the beginning of the unemployment that we explain very well the rights and the duties to the job seekers. This is very important. Also in order to reduce the duration of unemployment. The goal is not to sanction people. It's really just an instrument, but best is they understand what it's all about and do their best to find a job, and we don't have to sanction. When we implemented this politic, we started with a pilot in 2 cantons. They implemented regional employment centers, and these centers worked for about 1.5 years. And we evaluated what had been done in that time. And then there was a decision at the end of 96 to implement a general implementation nationwide. So first the pilot phase and then the deployment. And what happened then all cantons had to establish regional employment centers and increase labor market programs. Of course, some regions or larger cities already had some of these centers, but most municipalities are small, so it was a more part-time job, not very professional. So the idea was to have regional centers and not on the local level, and to professionalize the entire thing. We also then set the number of counselors per job seekers, number of administrative staff per job seeker, number of managers per counselor, so really setting the entire thing up. And also not only what the resources were defined, but also the activities, the number of interviews per job seekers, the minimal offer of labor market programs. We increased massively possibilities of labor market programs and also counseling. So this is very much steering over input and output, resources and activities to implement the system at that stage from 97 on. And then we moved on. We evaluated again the deployment phase in 99. And we decided, since the system was established at that time, after 2 years, 2.5 years, to switch to outcome-oriented steering from the year 2000. I think we were smarter centrally on the federal level for the first period, and it was also to make so we could define what were the resources, the activities. But very quickly, people who worked in the system were much more smarter than we were to respond to the problems, to the local problems. So we thought we must not so much put the focus on what they should do, the activities, how they should counsel people, use labor market programs, but then set goals, what they should achieve. And we implemented a benchmark of outcome-oriented indicators. I will explain that shortly. And also a global budget, meaning you have a maximal budget, but you have the freedom, I mean, the cantons have the freedom when it comes to input and output. So they can say how they use their input, they can do things by themselves, they can outsource part of the activities, and also the type of activity they will do, more counseling, more contacts with employers, more pressure, more controls. So it's all in the hand then of the cantons, and they have to establish their strategy to achieve the goals which are set. Maybe two important things when it comes to change and how we change things. We generally use pilot. A pilot, we don't implement things nationwide. And in the pilot, we work according to the plan, do, check, act, to this scheme. So really first think what you want to do, then we really do it for some time, and we don't change it. We don't have politics saying now we have to change after 2 months. So we say, okay, the pilot will go for one year is doing. Then we check it, we have an evaluation, and then there is a decision how it goes on. And I think this is a very important aspect of the way we do things, and we're allowed to do things, but also when you plan these 4 steps at the beginning of a process, I think it helps going through the process. We are currently helping Bosnia to implement a performance management system, and we also defined really the project according to that plan, do, check, act thing. And despite changing managers, the project is still going on. And now we are coming to the phase of evaluation. So if we want, this is a little bit of a funny chart. Before 96, we had a rather unprofessional active labor market policy, 3,000 local employment offices on municipal level. Then it became more professional, but input-output oriented from between 96 and 2000. And now we have a professional and outcome-oriented system. So, and this is based on agreements between the Confederation and cantons. So this means the Confederation, on the national level, we set out the objectives, but we don't give the detailed regulation anymore. I mean, there is a law, of course, cantons have to respect the law, but we try to give them as much freedom as possible so that they can come up with the right solution, the right ideas. Also regarding labor market programs, we have the possibilities of establish with almost endless possibilities for the cantons. I mean, they have to be they can be very creative sometimes also regarding programs, but we think it's important in order to answer to local problems, to give answer. And as I said, we have an agreement. It's between cantonal governments, and because cantons are a strong level in Switzerland, and the Federal Department of Economic Affairs. And this is an agreement we renew regularly. Renew it, but basically we never change the goals, the objectives over these many years. And as I said, we have a budget which allows to the canton, and this is not a political decision. This is, well, basically it's a political decision to implement a mathematic formula and having budgets allocated on the basis of the job-seeking rate and the cantonal number of job seekers. So we will not have a cut in budget suddenly in the middle of the year due to political reason. So the politic also wanted stability there, and we have some kind of something which is close to a law where the cantons can plan. They really know what's coming up, how much money they will have, and also when unemployment goes back, they have some time to restructure. So we moved to a new public management. Maybe what's interesting, what are the preconditions for implementing this kind of system, performance management system? Before I explain it, the political framework, it requires commitment, but then we really had an opportunity in '95 to implement something, because this was the theme #1 in the entire country, unemployment, so politics really wanted to move. Stability in goals, patience. When you implement something, you have to see also the outcomes, the results before changing anything. Really, it takes patience, it takes evaluation, no oversteering. I think this is very, very important. And also accept not to control everything centrally and accept local differences in implementation. You need a stable legal basis, also for financing, and the contract also. It's not just a matter of saying, well, you have to do that, you have to discuss it so that it's also understood what's expected. You need good data and the possibility of planning on regional level. The regional employment centers and the people working on cantonal level are cantonal employees, not federal. So they are in this framework. This has advantages and disadvantages. One advantage is since the cantonal level is so strong, then you have very close links, for instance, to the education departments, but then also on cantonal level, not only education is regulated there on cantonal level, also security, health systems. So you are very much then with your peers. You're not outside of the cantonal administration, and I think it's a very important asset. And if you want to move to this outcome-oriented steering, at first you need a structure which is implemented, processes which are implemented, then you can move on. Well, I explained the global budget already, so you have a maximal amount of money you can get, but refund only the money which is used, of course. It should not disappear in the nature. But then cantons can decide if they put more money in staff or in investments. It can be IT, in processing, active labor market programs, or work also with private contractors. Mainly, the direct work with private contractors regards labor market programs, not so much the counseling, except the fact that we are not the major player in the labor market. These are private employment services. I mean, Adecco, Manpower, and these kind of companies who have the larger part of the labor market. This is okay for us. They take care of the good risks also. We really tell the job seekers who are ready for the labor market also to go and register there. We have also a data bank we can work with, and we take care of those who need some help. So this is how we divide the clients. We have number also of partners. We don't work alone. We only have some precise duties. So we also work, of course, with, oh, no, that's not the right button, but we work, of course, with employers, with the job seekers, but also disability insurance, social security services, private employment agencies, as I said, CARI, Council, Labor Market Measures. So we're with a lot of partners. Interesting enough, there is always a talk, people always talk about relations with employers. We had a study made last year, and it came up that what came up is that the resources allocated to relations towards employers was about 5% of the entire resources. So it's much lower than we expected. And the study also said it doesn't take more. Less is not good, certainly, but it's enough. It's enough to open doors, to know the labor market, but we think that the job seekers should find the job by themselves. So you can open the door, but they have to go through the door. They have to find a job by themselves. So we have different duties. I will not go through the different points. On the national level, this is where I come from, SECO Directorate of Labor, then the public employment of the services, and also the regional employment services. So just a few figures, also to answer some of the questions this morning. We have 120 regional employment centers in 26 cantons. Since we're much smaller than France, so you have a similar relation. We have about 1,500 counselors, meaning that about 60% of the people working in the system work with the unemployed directly. And what we define as our instruments: counseling, job placement, training, labor market measures, and also controls and sanctions. Maybe I could say also these 1,500 counselors, it varies depending on the economic situation, have about 100 clients in their portfolio at a time. And we think between 80 and 120, then you can really work with these people. And if you have more, it's more getting more administrative work, but counseling is not possible anymore. And there are some moments where it's not really necessary. When there's a crisis coming, then you have to administrate people, and that if there are no jobs, counseling is not the priority anyway. Maybe to the agreement we have between the cantonal governments and the federal level. Just a few points in the center. We have, in fact, what we do is we measure the results of the cantons, of the regional employment centers. I will explain that briefly. After we communicate the results, so it's transparent how good every regional employment center is, every agency and every canton. On the central level, we have these process and output indicators to help also the cantons. So these are produced centrally. And then with those cantons who are not that good or employment services, we can work with them closer together in order to make sure they improve their results. It's not very easy because if we tell them what they do and doesn't work, they will tell us, well, it's because of you that it didn't work. So we give them a framework, make sure also they are in this process of plan, do, check, act. They really define objectives, measures, and we plan then if it was effective. And then also we have this exchange of best practices where I think we could do much better. But it's very much a trade-off between competition and working together. So it's both part of it. But the main, I would say, the main focus is on competition. How do we measure the results? We have 4 indicators. We have had them for almost 15 years now. And the most important is the duration of unemployment. So with the objective of rapid integration. Another one, the second one, is the prevention of long-term unemployment, meaning not having worked for 12 months. So to reduce the part of people who have not worked for 12 months. And then also prevent them to end benefits. And also the re-registration. But we have seen now that duration is not that important. And this is also why we have a weighing of the indicators. Oh, sorry. The most important indicator, which is half of the way to calculate the result, is the rapid reintegration. Because we know that people who reintegrate are on-off the labor market are not so much of a problem. 10 years ago, we thought it was a huge problem, but in fact, these are not so problematic. In the long term, they have decent income. The problem is people who have had a longer unemployment spell. These really lose. These people really lose income in the long term. So when we measure results, you know that I told you that depending on the region, we have very different economic structure, meaning, for instance, in regions with a lot of tourism, we have short spells of unemployment. So once they work for the season, and then they are unemployed for a few months, and then they work again. And in other regions, unemployment is longer. So we have an econometric model we use to compare all these employment centers, and we use so-called exogenous factors to explain the differences, the rest being the real differences. Of course, it leads to discussion. Not everyone understands what it means, but it's a very simple model, but it's also the game to when you're not so good, to say, well, I don't understand. It's probably the model and doesn't take everything into account. But that's the game. Any system, when you measure results, you can set objectives, then they will tell you, well, you negotiated very well last year. This is why you overperform, and I didn't, but I was as good as you were. So this is not the way we do it. We measure everyone and compare it with the average. And we calculated it only once a year. We don't want this oversteering, what we think is oversteering, discussing about results every month. It's a work in the long run. If you implement something, if you change your strategy, it takes a little bit of time to see results. So we make this comparison only once a year. And as I told you, what we measure is the average. So it's a little bit like running 100 meters or maybe 110 hurdles. When the economic situation is good, you don't have the hurdles. When you have an economic situation which is not that good, you have more hurdles, so you're slower. I mean, the average is slower, but you always measure how good you are respect to the average, and not the absolute time, because the economic situation varies also from year to year. So we publish this, we show it, and as you can see, if you see the white, I don't know what they're called, stripes or whatever, this is without correction, so there were larger differences, and after correction, these are the gray balconies, the differences are smaller. This is in fact what this model does. So I'm sorry, I'm a bit too long, but I hope I will finish quickly. We think that this relative benchmark is a strong incentive for improvement. It's because of competition. but also the so-called reputation effect. We had also financial incentives, and we realized the pressure was too strong. And then the managers were more concerned about explaining why everything we calculated was wrong, instead of thinking, oh, well, I should improve and then I will get better results. And with this reputation effect, that's enough pressure, but not too much. So you focus on your job and not on the way things, results are calculated. It gives the incentive of reintegrating job seekers quickly, of course. We have better possibilities to act. And it's also, since it's transparent, this idea of accountability. We talk more about transparency. It's a political shield. When you are transparent, funnily enough, politics will disturb you less. They will not come up with some idea. They will let you do your job because they see that you are doing something. So what I said, not too strong competition, because it leads to demotivation. One of the problems we have, of course, is relation between input, output, and impacts, outcomes. Neglecting sustainability, this is a bullet point which I could take out in the meantime. We focus on benefit recipients and not so much on non-benefit recipients, but which should be ready for the labor market. But this is what we are working on currently in the new agreement, and the econometric model, which is considered by Canton to be too complicated, a black box, although it's very simple linear regression. Then they can calculate on their own. So, thank you. I will stop here.
Спасибо большое за